Welcome back to the program. New York Governor Kathy Hochul is facing threats of lawsuits over illegal immigration and congestion pricing, and her belief that the state should remain a sanctuary state, even though it's costing billions of dollars. But just for a little fun, let's remember, apparently the governor thinks black kids in New York City don't know what a computer is.
Young black kids growing up in the Bronx who don't even know what the word computer is. They don't know. They don't know these things. And I want the world open up to all of them, because when you have their diverse voices innovating solutions through technology, then you're really addressing society's broader challenges.
That one caused no real controversy in the left-wing media, even though she assumed that black kids don't. No Republican ever would have survived that. Here she is giving the playbook away, the weaponization of Medicaid.
I'm wondering, what with these Medicaid cuts that Republicans are promising right now, what would these Medicaid cuts do to people who lived in communities like I lived in upstate New York?
Joe, you hit on something that is so profound, is that the red parts of even New York and across America, these are the people who are going to be hit hardest by what the Republican members of Congress did, and by drinking the Kool-Aid and not even questioning the merits of destroying a program that so many of their own constituents rely on. If you go back memory lane, 2011, I got elected to Congress in the most Republican district in the state of New York, large swaths of upstate New York. You know how I did that? The Paul Ryan budget came out and declared war on Medicare. And I was able to take that as a long-shot Democrat that no one thought I had a chance to win, and weaponize that and say, you did this to these seniors up in Wyoming County, in Orleans County, in Niagara County. You've hurt the health care system. You made sure.
You also turned your back on your previous position on the Second Amendment, where you used to have an A rating from the NRA. All right, joining me to discuss Kathy Hochul's time as governor is New York State Assemblyman for the 94th District, Matt Slater. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, so you're like if you're from Long Island, you call that upstate. If you're from way up upstate, you still think of that as downstate, right? If you're up by the Canadian border, I used to be a local host in Albany, and you'd say Putnam County, they'd go, that's not upstate, that's downstate.
That's
so you're
right.
You're like right there as New York starts to get a little bit more rural.
Yeah, we're right in the battleground of upstate versus downstate. It is really the heart of New York in a lot of ways. Great district, great communities. I grew up there, and just so proud to represent it here in the New York State Assembly.
I have been saying that if the election were held today with the immigration issue, that Lee Zeldin would win the election. That she barely eked out a victory there by New York standards. You look at the polling after the fact, people are angry at how much has been spent on the illegal immigration problem. And I don't know if it went as far as Putnam, but I know she promised or threatened to put 800,000 low-income housing units in Nassau and Suffolk County, and I believe even Westchester, which was ground zero for Obama's affirmatively furthering fair housing scheme.
Listen, Governor Hochul has been a Class A disaster. She's been completely inept. She has yet to prove her ability to lead after crisis, whether it's the immigration crisis, which has cost New Yorkers $4.3 billion. Think about that. With all the problems that we have in this state, we are giving $4.3 billion to house, feed, clothe, educate people who came to this country illegally under the open border policies of the disastrous presidency of Joe Biden. And so we have so much to do to rebuild this state. Kathy Hochul is a feckless leader who has no idea what she's doing, and she has no vision for the future of this great empire state.
How has your district been impacted by the congestion prices? Look, I live in New Jersey. I get it. There's a big battle now between Murphy and Hochul because it's costing New Jersey commuters. But what about your district?
Well, I live in a commuter district. I mean, most of my residents, they commute down either the Hudson or the Harlem lines, but many, especially our police, our firefighters, our EMS workers, they have to commute into the city, and they're being charged this absurd and insulting $9 tax just to show up to work to protect the people of New York City. That is wrong. And I am so thankful that President Trump has stepped in and wiped congestion pricing off the map, which is exactly what should be happening.
And that's because there's federal dollars that go
Correct.
to the bridges and tunnels and the Port Authority. And also it kind of sheds, like Joe Biden used to love to talk about cops and firefighters, but most cops and firefighters can't afford. If your precinct, if your district, your firehouse is here in Manhattan, you can't live here on what they're paying cops and firefighters.
Absolutely not. And I know police officers who are stationed at World Trade Center, and they actually go in at 4 o'clock in the morning to beat the congestion pricing charge. So they sit in their cars and they go back to sleep. That is an insult to every man and woman who wears that uniform, protecting the people of New York and New York City. And that is on Kathy Hochul.
Yeah, that's literally right across the street from our studio. We broadcast right across from Ground Zero. You know, some in the Manhattan set would say, well, the rest of the state doesn't go on without us. There's also a reverse look at that without the people coming in from the outer boroughs and
Right.
Long Island and the northern counties, at least the ones that can commute to the city, you might not have delivery trucks. You might not have, small businesses rely on those delivery trucks, plumbing contractors, building contractors, and cops and firefighters.
100%. Ace Endico, which is Putnam County's largest private employer, has already said that this congestion pricing tax, because it is a tax, will cost them an extra $250,000 to their business. Now, they are a juggernaut in the Hudson Valley and across New York City, and it's just this anti-business mentality that every solution is a tax. That is what New York State has become under one-party Democratic rule, and it's time for it to change.
I got one for you. I used to broadcast out of Albany when Joe Bruno ran the Senate and Sheldon Silver ran the Assembly. Why don't you call this a tariff? They should call it New York. It's a New York City tariff, right?
You're charging because they can't manage their own budgets. Think about this. The MTA, their budget is larger than 20 states. 20 states. And meanwhile, they're leaving nearly $700 million on the table every year because of toll evasions and fare evasions. People are jumping the turnstiles, and we're not even talking about that. Instead of actually cracking down on that, these guys went out and they actually got psychologists to study why somebody would actually jump the turnstiles. What a joke. Meanwhile, you're insulting every police officer, every firefighter, every first responder who has to pay that stupid tax in order to fund the MTA. It's completely outrageous and wrong.
Well, I thought it was because of the environment.
Yeah, that's what they wanted everyone to believe. But if you talk to Democrats in Nassau County, in the outer boroughs, their residents are flipping out because their environment is now being crushed because of all the people who are driving there in order to take the subway and avoid the congestion pricing.
That's crazy stuff. There's a part of me that, like the SALT deduction, that says, you know what, Sean Duffy, back off this. Let New Yorkers fight this out on their own, and the Democrats are going to look bad in the end. There's another part of me that says if you're taking federal money, you got to get the opinions of the federal government. So then say, Kathy Hochul, all right, we don't want any more of your DOT money. We're just fine here. All right, I got to leave it there. Thank you for joining us.
Always great being with you. Thanks for the opportunity. Have a great day.
All right, coming up in my argument, calm down about the stock market. Calm down. This too shall pass. My argument is coming up next.